Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to talk about one of the new skills that's being added in the 3.15 Expedition expansion, and that is Eye of Winter. But firstly, I just want to state that this has been buffed considerably since it was first revealed. So if you've had a look at the Expedition information page and thought Eye of Winter's numbers look pretty bad, we'll get to the changes on it later, but it's looking a lot better than it did when it was initially revealed. So, this is a skill that has a little bit of a place in my heart, and that is because I, as a teenager, really liked Diablo 2. And one of the builds I liked playing in Diablo 2 a lot was the Sorceress and the Frozen Orb Sorceress. Now, I don't know that this was a top tier build for a long time. I think it sort of was for a while, then it sort of fell off in popularity, but it was the best build I ever played in that game. And I completed the entire game on it quite a few times. And then tried other things, and just nothing had the same magic to it. The core concept of Frozen Orb was that you fire a projectile out in front of you, and it radiates shards of ice. Those shards of ice could chill enemies. I think they could freeze them, and then at the end of its path, the main projectile exploded. Well, guess what Eye of Winter does? It is a projectile of cold that flies in front of you and continually radiates out damage. So let's have a look at it in action. And one thing I want to say is that this is a skill that might actually bring back the support gem faster projectiles from the dead. So here you'll see that's the projectile there that's sort of gone over to those chaos spitting snakes. You'll see that then it's radiating off these extra shards as it travels, and then when it explodes at the end of its path, it fires off an extra bunch of projectiles. However, one thing that's interesting, and you'll see that in a sec with this character, is that watch when they fire into this bookcase, which will be in about a second or so, that projectile immediately explodes. And so this gives Eye of Winter considerable opportunity for careful use around terrain that spells can collide with. So here it goes. That one exploded early, firing off its final burst of projectiles. And that's the skill, really. It's really simple. Let's talk about damage. Let's talk about ways to scale it once we've finished seeing all of its gameplay footage. We have no more gameplay footage than that, unfortunately. That is the end of what we've got. So, in terms of the changes that were made today, the gem was originally revealed, as you see on the right-hand side. Skill at character level 28 required for gem level 1. It had 11 to 16 damage, and it had 25% effectiveness of added damage. These have been increased by a massive 60%. So now 25% becomes 40%, 11 becomes 17, 16 becomes 25. That is a huge increase. Additionally, projectiles continuously gain damage. It used to be up to 100% more damage by the time they dissipate, and that's now up to 200% more damage by the time they dissipate. So this means that this skill will reward very, very careful damage projection, very, very careful targeting. So it looks like it could be a quite interesting skill, and one that is best when used at medium range, which then poses the question, how do you keep monsters at medium range? Do you bother to try? If you do bother to try, how well do you do at that? And that's why I think it'll be quite an interesting skill. So, in terms of your options for scaling this skill, it's a cold damage spell that does a lot of little hits. There's a number of ways you can scale this. Critical strikes is a very common and very popular way. Critical strikes are particularly good with skills that deal cold damage because they can freeze enemies, and then once you freeze an enemy, you can then cause that enemy to become shattered, and then, well, actually, you always shatter it. If you kill an enemy that's frozen, it always shatters. But when that happens, both that destroys the corpse, and it also allows you to proliferate explosions through packs with Herald of Ice. I think that Herald of Ice will be a staple in most Eye of Winter builds. It feels like it will just be really, really strong there. However, there's a couple of oddball interactions you can do with this. Because of the focus on targeting of this skill, I think that there'll be a lot of use for this skill with mines. So mines are a way where instead of you casting the spell yourself, you drop an object on the ground, a single-use object on the ground, that when it detonates, it will cast Eye of Winter for you. We need to see how well Eye of Winter targets through mines, and that's not going to be something we can really test until we're actually playing the game. But I think that Eye of Winter Mines has some potential to be a powerful combination, and I'm keen to test that out at some point during the league. Additionally, you could conceivably convert this damage to fire. So converting to fire is done by attaching cold to fire support to Eye of Winter, and also by equipping the unique ring Pyre. Pyre converts 48% of your cold damage to fire damage, 40% by default, but if you're using this, you'll use Catalyst to make it 48%. And then what this does is it means that if for every 100 cold damage you would have done, you instead deal 2 cold and 98 fire damage with this setup, plus the other benefits of cold to fire support. The benefits to doing this, though, are that you gain access to a couple of unique scaling mechanisms. Most notably, you gain access to the Replica Cold Iron Point daggers. These are unique daggers that drop in Heist. They're not very rare, although they're not super common either. And they grant you +3 to the level of all cold skill gems, but they turn off your character's ability to deal cold damage. So this is a bit of a puzzle usually to build around, but basically dual wielding Replica Cold Iron Points will grant +6 to the level of your Eye of Winter, which is a massive damage boost on most spells. And so Replica Cold Iron Point is something I would definitely have in mind. But your other option, though, of course, is just simply to use this skill in conjunction with the old school powerhouse of Herald of Ice. And Herald of Ice is just tremendously satisfying to play. You know, chain reactions that proliferate through packs of monsters with a really satisfying explosion sound. You'd also try and add flat damage to this, and then conceivably use all sorts of ailments. You could use the Cluster Jewel exclusive notable Sadist if you can give Eye of Winter the ability to inflict some sort of shock and some sort of ignite. Then you could use Sadist as well with it, and then that'll give you a huge chunk of extra elemental damage. So there's a lot of options for scaling this. I think it's an open question which will end up being the best. But my gut is leaning towards maybe traps or mines being the way to, or being mines specifically, being the way to play this skill. But let's wait and see. There's a whole league to figure that out. That's all I've got really on Eye of Winter. It looks like an interesting skill. It looks like something that will be used a lot with hypothermia support as well, depending upon the numbers on hypothermia. But if you've got comments or questions, definitely fire away below. If you're looking forward to using this skill, then definitely say so. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one, and may your Varlorbs have interesting results.